Hawkeye sits back on the couch and admits, almost casually, that he goes online to see what people are saying about the Avengers, because whether anyone wants to admit it or not, everyone does. He points out that maybe Thor doesn't bother, and maybe Wolverine doesn't either, before smirking, admitting that Wolverine probably does too. What Hawkeye finds most entertaining is how obsessed people are with debating who deserves to be an Avenger and what it supposedly takes, especially when they start asking, who are the real Avengers? From everything he's seen, the internet seems to agree on only one thing. Nobody qualifies. Even Captain America isn't spared, with some people convinced he's nothing more than a propaganda tool created by the military-industrial complex, while others insist he actually died back in World War II. Hawkeye explains that no matter how much evidence exists proving otherwise, there will always be people who refuse to believe that Steve Rogers is really Steve Rogers, or that Steve Rogers is actually Captain America. And on top of all that, there's a whole group convinced the Avengers were sullied the moment the original team stepped aside for new members. Hawkeye leans into the conversation by asking who actually qualifies as Avengers material, admitting that this is the real question people keep arguing about. He starts breaking it down by listing who clearly doesn't make the cut, dismissing the idea of a crazy ninja mutant first. From there, the comments start coming in. Wolverine adds that a public menace wouldn't count either. Spider-Man follows by ruling out an alien from outer space. Novar jumps in to say a wizard shouldn't qualify, while Doctor Strange adds that a convicted criminal is out as well. Luke Cage continues by saying a rich, drunk guy doesn't belong, and Iron Man counters by excluding an ex-Hydra agent. Spider-Woman finishes the list by joking that even a circus boy with a criminal record wouldn't pass either. Hawkeye pulls it all together, pointing out that sometimes the answer isn't obvious at all, letting the idea hang there before quietly adding, sometimes. Hawkeye explains that sometimes it isn't the person who defines the Avengers, but the Avengers who define the person. Some people don't realize what they're capable of until they're standing in the middle of something bigger than themselves, surrounded by others who force them to rise to the moment. It doesn't arrive with a dramatic announcement either. It sneaks in quietly, catches you off guard, and suddenly your life looks different than it did before. He brings up Daredevil, imagining how the Red Skull's blitzkrieg on New York must have been overwhelming for someone with enhanced senses, the kind of chaos that would push anyone past their limits. Hawkeye groups Daredevil in with people like Spider-Man, and even himself admitting that none of them ever saw themselves as Avengers material. I bet he never saw himself as the Avenger type. Except ends up he is exactly the Avengers type. Daredevil races through the streets as the city erupts around him, civilians scattering while massive robots level buildings with indiscriminate blasts. Daredevil launches himself straight into the fight without hesitation. He vaults off wreckage, strikes fast, and manages to bring one of the machines crashing down, allowing himself a brief breath as he mutters, "Okay then." That wasn't so. The moment doesn't last. As the smoke clears, his momentum stalls, and he finally sees what's waiting ahead. More iron giants rising through the destruction, their weapons already locking onto him. Luke Cage admits he knows Daredevil. I know him pretty well, actually. Well as he lets anyone know him. End of the day, without question, he's one of the best, ever. He makes it clear this isn't about origin stories or whispered secrets, brushing aside rumors as pretty much crap, and instead focuses on what actually matters. That Daredevil has sacrificed everything to make the city safer. He has lost more and suffered more for his dedication to you than, well, anyone I know. Luke acknowledges that Daredevil isn't the strongest or the flashiest among them, but emphasizes that he cannot be brought down. Driven by demons deeper than most people could survive, he continues, and I'm telling you, in this business, all of us are demon-driven. And even on that level, he still defines himself by his drive and dedication. Luke reframes the question entirely. People gonna ask, is Daredevil Avengers material? In my opinion, and I don't mean to be all corny, but to me the question is, are the Avengers Daredevil material? Daredevil launches himself straight into the chaos, leaping onto one of the massive armored robots. He manages to take one of them down. For a brief moment, it looks like he has the upper hand until a sudden blast catches him mid-motion and sends him flying hard into a nearby building. The impact detonates part of the structure on contact. Armored vehicles continue advancing, weapons firing relentlessly into the wreckage where Daredevil just fell moments earlier. Daredevil is gone from the spot where he fell. From inside one of the vehicles, a soldier shouts orders in German, demanding they find the red-clad fighter and declaring that no superhuman is leaving the city alive. Without warning, Daredevil reappears in the middle of the battlefield. He has seized control of a massive multi-barreled gun, and as he pulls the trigger, the weapon erupts in a blinding muzzle flashes. Shell casings rain through the air as explosions tear through the armored robot like enemies in front of him, one after another collapsing under the sudden onslaught. Daredevil shouts as he fires, his voice raw and furious. Daredevil keeps moving through the chaos, striking again and again. He punches through enemies with relentless precision while, in the distance behind him, Avengers Tower begins to collapse. The upper sections of the tower explode outward, fire and debris raining down as the structures give way, sending a massive cloud of smoke into the sky. Daredevil slows, turning toward the destruction just as the tower finally falls completely. Staring at it in shock, he breathes out a single stunned realization. Avengers Tower. Jessica Jones takes over the narration, admitting she wasn't present for this part and that she's recounting it exactly as it was told to her. She explains that all of the new Avengers arrived at Avengers Tower just moments after it had already fallen, the destruction still fresh and the shock still setting in. Earlier, she had left their baby behind at Avengers Mansion in the care of Doreen, their nanny, and not just any nanny, but a super-powered one. Trusting the mansion to be one of the safest places on Earth, Avengers Mansion, she reminds herself, is supposed to be secure. Except they had just watched Avengers Tower collapse completely, which meant nothing was truly safe anymore. Jessica admits that they were so preoccupied with the nightmare unfolding right in front of them that she convinced herself the baby was as protected as possible, because she trusted Doreen without hesitation and believed she would do anything in her power to keep the child safe. What Jessica didn't know at the time was that across town, Daredevil, she almost says his real name, was fighting Nazis of his own, and in the middle of that chaos he overheard them speaking German about regrouping at Avengers Mansion and making sure it was taken out as well. Of course, Daredevil understood every word. Of course he speaks German. And the moment he realized that none of the Avengers were at the mansion and that the baby was still there, everything changed. Avengers Mansion is under full-scale assault, surrounded on all sides as heavy fire rains down on the building. Blasts slamming into its walls and tearing chunks of stone and metal free while explosions ripple outward and debris fills the air. Inside the mansion, alarms blare and an automatic announcement echoes through the halls, declaring, Avengers Mansion entering lockdown mode. A warning that only adds to the chaos. Doreen, Squirrel Girl, is inside when it happens, already covered in blood and dirt, clutching the baby tightly in her arms as she looks around in shock, barely able to process what's happening. Almost immediately, another announcement follows, Avengers Mansion under siege, confirming the worst as the attack breaches deeper into the building. Explosions erupt closer now, shaking the structure as enemy forces push inside, forcing Doreen to run through the corridors while holding the crying baby close to her chest. The mansion erupts into chaos as the automatic warning screams, Lockdown! Lockdown! Squirrel Girl is still shaking as she thinks back and admits, That was crazy. She explains how the building was under attack and then, without warning, it wasn't anymore. How everything spiraled into noise and panic before collapsing into nothing. The sudden quiet so unsettling it felt wrong, like the world itself had stopped breathing. Raising her hands as she remembers it, she describes the sounds, firing, explosions, impacts, yet none of it seemed to strike the house itself. As if the attackers were tearing into each other instead, until she realizes she's standing there frozen, holding the baby, terrified because she has no idea what she's supposed to do. She swallows and admits it probably wasn't the smartest decision, but she had to know what was happening, had to peek outside just once. When she finally looks outside the mansion, the scale of it hits her all at once. The grounds are torn apart, littered with debris and shattered robot-like bodies scattered everywhere as smoke and fire still burn around the estate. Before she can process it, there's a sharp knock at the door and a voice calling out cautiously. Hello? Are you okay in there?" She moves closer, admitting, The building sort of locked itself." From the other side of the door, the voice orders, "Go into the kitchen. Get away from the door. Now!" And she doesn't hesitate, turning and moving fast, pulling the baby close as she retreats deeper into the house. The front door detonates inward in a violent blast, and through the smoke steps Daredevil, already moving, already in control. She stares at him in disbelief, the shock slipping out as a quiet, "Wow." He doesn't slow, lifting her and the baby with practiced ease, and she blurts his name. "Daredevil." He admits simply, "Hi, is the baby okay?" She nods. "Thanks to you." Daredevil orders, "Follow me." She starts to speak, still overwhelmed. "That was a mate," but he cuts her off sharply with, "It's not over yet." Inside the kitchen, she tries again, breathless and grateful. "Really, thank you, only for him to silence her once more with a firm, "Shh." Confused, she asked, "What are you?" And he interrupts her again, "Just, shh." Then he stops, tilts his head, and points with certainty, declaring, "There." 3 weeks later, New York has settled back into its rhythm. Inside Nelson and Murdoch, attorneys at law, the office is quiet and dim. Desks cluttered with scattered papers, folders, and old files. Matt Murdoch sits alone at his desk, his head tilts upwards, his expression tightening as his senses catch on something. What is it now? A moment later, Matt is no longer in the office. Now dressed as Daredevil, he lands lightly on a rooftop, already mid-motion, body twisting as he calls out toward the figure waiting there, asking, "How long were you planning on standing out here waiting for me to sense you?" Jessica Jones stands beside Luke Cage, their baby in Jessica's arms. She replies with a dry honesty, "Not much longer, I'll tell you that." Luke adds, "Just respecting the struggle of a double life." Daredevil replies, "Look at you, the family Cage." Jessica steps forward, passes the baby to Luke, and wraps Daredevil in a tight hug. Caught off guard, he lets out a soft, "Oh." Luke breaks the moment by pointing out the obvious, asking if Daredevil really thought they wouldn't have figured out it was him who saved their kid. Daredevil looks down, flustered, starting to protest. "Oh, well, I didn't." But Jessica cuts through that with a simple, sincere, "Thank you." Daredevil answers just as simply, telling her she would have done the same for him. Jessica asks how he even knew there was an underground bunker in Avengers Mansion. Daredevil answers, reminding her, "Radar sense, remember?" Then he asks the question that's been sitting in the back of his mind, how all that Nazi chaos ended. Luke shrugs it off in his own way. "Well, we ain't good at goose-stepping, so I guess it worked out." Daredevil admits how strange it feels to fight for his life without ever seeing how it started or how it ended, and Luke answers with something simple. "Sometimes you just gotta fight." Daredevil nods. "Sometimes." Luke then reaches into his pocket, pulling something out and holding it towards Daredevil, explaining they wanted to get him something to say thank you. Daredevil starts to refuse, telling them they don't have to, but Jessica cuts in. "What do you get the guy who has everything?" Daredevil then asks them, "What did you two do?" Daredevil finally takes what Luke is holding out to him, still unsure, asking again what they've done as his fingers trace the object in his hand. What he's holding is a shiny metallic identification card. Raised prominently on it is a large Avengers logo, with his name printed clearly beside it, Daredevil, followed by Priority Identification. His face is pictured on the card, and beneath the lettering his name is etched again in Braille, unmistakably meant for him. The realization hits all at once, and Daredevil freezes before quietly saying, "I can't accept this." Luke answers without hesitation, telling him that he's been called, while Jessica backs that up, explaining that the call has already been given. Daredevil tries to object, pointing out that things between him and Captain America haven't exactly been smooth lately. But Luke shuts that down immediately, making it clear this isn't about Cap at all. This is his Avengers. Daredevil hesitates again, admitting that he thought he and Luke weren't exactly on the best of terms either. But Luke corrects him, saying they genuinely like where Daredevil's head has been lately and respects what he's been trying to do with his life. Jessica adds her own blunt honesty, saying they like him, full stop. Luke encourages him to try it out, telling him not to say no just yet, while Jessica seals the argument with a simple promise: free food. Daredevil doesn't answer right away. He just stands there, card still in his hand and a small smile forming, the kind that doesn't need words. The conversation circles back to Hawkeye, who asks, "So who is a worthy Avenger?" He throws out the idea of a selfless samurai warrior. Wolverine follows, describing a misunderstood hero who never gives up, while Spider-Man says, "A cunning military mind from another culture." Novar adds his own perspective, saying, "A true master and protector of the mystic arts." Doctor Strange continues talking about an unbreakable urban warrior. Luke Cage continues the list, saying a futurist, and Iron Man builds on that by naming the best secret agent in the world. Spider-Woman adds her own pick, recognizing the best marksman on the planet. At the end of it all, Daredevil speaks, a small smile on his face as he finishes the thought. And a swashbuckling ninja who can't say no to a friend. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel.